Hello and welcome everybody to another day of Charm Chats and Happily Ever After Sprints. We are almost done for the month, but we've had a full month of talking about fantasy romance and bringing on authors to talk about their writing and their books, play some games, and do a writing sprint. I'm Shannon. I write under the pen name of SC Huston, and you're here on my channel where I publish content about my writing and self-publishing and do weekly writing sprints. I'm also part of the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks podcast with Ben Pick from Running to Write and Morgan Lee. And I'm also the founder and conference chair for the AuthorTube Writing Conference, now heading into its third year. And that is June 28th to the 30th. So look out for that. We have lots of wonderful speakers coming on board. Besides what I do here on YouTube, I am a fantasy romance and YA fantasy author with a passion for writing about broken characters who face adversity to become better versions of themselves. And there may or may not be a dragon, but there's always love to find. Today, I am joined by Rachel D. Adams. We are going to learn a little bit about one of her books and her writing, and of course, play that game and do a writing sprint. Now I'm going to do her bio. Rachel is a writer, an ally, sorry, a reader, an amateur photog, a foodie, a home chef, content creator, empty nester, traveler, wife, and trusted friend. She sprinkles magic and mischief into everything she does. Oh, I love that. You got magic and mischief in there, which is kind of like your logo and what's on your ring.
Yep.
So, she comes from the southern U.S. and has told stories for as long as she can remember. She's currently self-publishing an urban fantasy series and a prequel series to that, both of which contain paranormal romance and non-traditional relationships. She and her co-author also have a set of companion novels planned that focus on the romances of the side characters in their books, and an unrelated fantasy romance planned. She read her first romance when she found a stash of Harlequins in her aunt's closet, and she added romance to pretty much every work of fiction she's written, from fan fiction to collaborative role-playing groups to her current series. And then she ended her bio with the statement, "I'm looking forward to Charm Chatting." So I am also looking forward to this. So welcome, Rachel. Tell us a little bit about you and anything else that you want to
add. I grew up in the South. It's a big part of who I am and a big part of how I explore different themes when it comes to my writing. So you may see things like that sprinkled throughout. I know that a lot of people, when they look at my writing, they're like, "Oh, well, what's this about?" And I'm like, "Well, it actually comes from real life, actually." So I don't know exactly what else to put in. You did such a good job of handling all of that. I've got a lot of my writing comes from people in real life that I've encountered and situations that I've encountered. So there is that.
And we also had you on the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks podcast. We just interviewed you not too long ago, and that's coming out March 15th. And I didn't know, but that what I found was awesome was that you also did a lot of your writing to start with was just fan fiction. And there you found your co-authors and then developed relationships enough that now you're writing your own fiction together. So I thought that was really cool.
Yes. I mean, we've been writing since MSN groups, clubs, actually, Yahoo clubs. 1999, 1998 on up, and we were writing these kind of stories, which is amazing for some people because they're like, really, in the 90s? It's like, yeah, we were writing about stuff back then that was considered taboo, or they were like, oh, well, you just barely hear anything about it. This was the time of Will and Grace, and Ellen had just come out, and things like that, but we had characters that were all over the LGBTQ spectrum, and we had also different types of kinks and things like that going on with our writing. But one thing that stood out to me when we were doing fan fiction and what drew me to specific co-authors within that area was the fact that we always had a plot. Like, we had a plot, we had an adventure going on, and then romance was part of it, instead of it just being about the physical acts and stuff.
Yeah. I get that. All right, we did have a few people who stepped in. So Devin, hello, good morning. Yay, Shannon and Rachel. And Miranda Cauldrons, Rita H, hello.
Hello.
And other Rachel.
Other Rachel.
Yes, today she's other Rachel. So it depends.
We call each other other Rachel.
Yeah. In my head, it's like whoever's first, they're Rachel. The other one that comes in later is other Rachel. So, but hello, lovelies.
RC.
Yep. RC Scott came in, got a couple of questions, and we'll get to those in just a moment. RC says, magic and mischief. Yep. I'm about murder, madness, and mayhem. Oh, that's pretty close. You just don't really have the magic in there. That's about it.
Yeah, I need some magic.
I remember the MS group, so it was sad when they shut down. Yeah, everything goes away. I remember, back in, it was like 2013 when I graduated, and I was doing my own business as a writing coach, and Google had, what was it? What is it that they had? It was replaced by Google Workspace, but what they had before was free.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Now I can't remember it either.
I can't, and that was like a big
curse
thing.
Of mentioning it, it's just going to pop out of your head
later. Yeah. But that was the thing to use if you were doing a business at the time. So I was like, okay, so I got really into that. And now it's gone. So
yeah, we went from one thing to another. It depended on who was doing upgrades and what they were wanting from you as far as a group moderator. And so we would, it was so funny. It was like we went from MSN to Yahoo to MSN to back to Yahoo. And then Yahoo finally shut their forums down. And we wound up finding groups.io. And so it was a similar format to Yahoo, but not Yahoo. And it was just like one thing after another. But we had this core group of about 10 to 12 people that would leave, come back. And we were all into fan fiction of comic characters, especially, but also fantasy. And so we would make maybe each time we would migrate, we would make like 3 groups. One was for DC, one was for Marvel, and one was for a fantasy. So
I feel like you kind of answered this first question a little bit already. What drew you to write in the fantasy romance genre? And you probably classify your work more as romantic fantasy, being more fantasy based with a romance subplot.
Yes.
So I know you kind of talked about already how already you guys were writing the fantasy and the romance was always there. Is there anything else that you want to add to
that? Well, we also liked to dabble into things that were alternative lifestyle sort of things.
Yeah.
We were doing that before, the big push for that kind of series came out. 50 Shades and all that kind of stuff came out, and we were just like, oh, look, we were told we shouldn't do stuff like this. Great. We should have just gone with it. Yeah. So yeah, we've always been the types that wanted to push the buttons and push the envelope when it came to stuff like that. And so even in the stories that we chose to make into our series, our first initial series, there's going to be a touch of that, especially with the prequel series. There'll be a little bit more of that involved, especially in the vampire's dragon, because the vampire himself is more into that kind of thing.
Yes. So let's talk about your book for today, but I wanted to start with the series because this is the second book in the series, The Life and Loves of a Dragon. Can you tell us about the series?
The series started off as an accident. We decided to go with an initial urban fantasy series that has an overarching, it's 5 books. It has an overarching plot that goes all the way through it. That's both one part romantic and one part just adventure and thriller. You're trying to figure out different missions. And then each book also focuses on a specific group of people that are involved with our main characters. So we thought, we've not really dove into this backstories. We keep alluding to the backstory, but we ourselves as authors had never fleshed out the backstories. So we thought, hey, on the side, let's just do this so that we can always, when we want to reference it in the main series, we can go back and go, oh, we wrote about this here. We know that this happened. And as we did that, then Vella came out, Kindle Vella, and I had never looked into Wattpad or anything like that. So someone brought Kindle Vella to my attention, and I thought, hey, let's just put the prequels over there. I mean, might as well. It made me money so that I could buy cover art.
Yeah.
So that's what we were doing to begin with. It was really just an accident that we decided, hey, we could actually make a prequel series too, since we're at it. And that's how it got born. The Pax Dragon is the very first one. It's available for free just by signing up for my newsletter. It became my reader magnet. And I've since actually gotten cover art for it so that I could put it up on everywhere that I can as far as getting it for paperback.
Yeah.
And but because it's free for my newsletter, I haven't released it on ebook anywhere other than through the newsletter. And then we're writing the Vampire's Dragon, and the next one will be the Mage's Dragon, which we've got lined up, but we don't have it. We have not edited it yet. We've just got the scenes lined up for it.
Gotcha. So one thing that I'm going to do is I don't have a free book that I give away yet. I just have a free short story, which I don't sell on platforms because it is just a short story. But when I get to a certain point, and I'm hoping it's going to be possibly later this year, maybe early next year, I'm going to offer one of my novels free as a reader magnet. But what I plan to do for the ebook is that I will still sell it at a price, but I will put in because readers can preview your book. Preview the first part of it, and I'm going to put right there in the front, you can get this for free if you join my newsletter magnet or my newsletter.
That's a good idea. I may have to take notes because I've been trying to figure this out the whole time, because you don't want to give it away to anybody else, because it's special for people who go to your newsletter. Right.
So I've always known that's exactly what I want to do, is once I have a free book that I'm giving away. So I'm probably going to do that with my novella, but I don't know. I've gone back and forth whether the novella or the first book in my series. If the first book in my series is going to be well over a year before I do that. So, but whichever one I do, I will put that.
I mean, it's either going to be that, or I'm going to offer my entire newsletter group a new one, something that's like a side story.
Yeah.
And then that way I can just take this and make it part of the entire series and load it up as an ebook, and then it can be sold the same way as any of the other ones. Yeah. So it's a thought. We've got so many stories. I was looking the other day, and we've got saved in Google Documents. We have at least 300 documents.
Wow.
Of stories. Yeah, that we can just keep telling along the way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Lindsay Buroker, I watch, I look at how she's done throughout her career, and what, she'll write a full series and then she'll move on to another series. And I think it's when she starts moving into her next series after that the first book of the very first of that series that she put out a little while ago, she sets it as free. And then, as she moves through each series and she writes a full series, and she makes the first book free, this one free. And so she's got a lot of first and series,
which is fine for me. I don't mind making it free. I just want to make sure that I don't get stuck where people don't get something special for being part of the newsletter. Right.
And I'm curious about, I want to try and stick with your book, but maybe we can talk behind the scenes on this. But I'm curious how you're doing that. What is your approach then? How's it different for your Ream? Because you just started Ream. How's that different versus your newsletter? Because that's something I'm struggling with too. Is that, I do give this free short story to my newsletter, but I was like, okay, I could also offer that on Ream, but I want something more on Ream if they follow me versus being in my newsletter.
So on Ream, what I've done is we had the Kindle Vella version of all of these prequels, and where the story starts there is after the Vampire's Dragon. So that's going to be like the first tier, but I also offer two other storylines within one is within this world, and the other one is actually a contemporary romance thriller that we're working on, that we're still trying to work out the kinks on, but there's over 40 episodes up there. So I decided those would be for the first tier, or the first tier that's paid. For my followers, they're getting things that what I call the cutting room floor.
I did see those emails.
So that's what I'm doing for them, is all my followers are going to get deleted scenes or snippets of scenes, things like that. Partly because I realized that you can copy and paste from Ream, and I was like, I don't really want to put my stuff up there, immediately that can be easily copy and pasted. Yeah. But the snippets and plus they can see insight because I don't just provide them with the snippets or the cutscenes. I actually go into detail of this is why we didn't use this, or this is what we were looking for to use this for, but it just didn't work out with what we were doing in that particular book, and things like that. So that's what I've got for the followers. I'll probably come up with some other surprises, but it'll be things that are digital, just like that. It's something that they can get on that. When it comes to further tiers, I decided that we would add in the companion set, is on a tier. There's also an offer of, if you've got a favorite character and a specific scene that you would really, really love to have us flesh out, or if you even want to, or if you can come up with an idea for a scene that we can write for you specifically, we would do that for one of the tiers. And then we do have further on exclusives to Ring.
I've got my tiers. It's set up. I was just curious about how you were doing that different for your followers, because that's a different platform, someone to follow you versus like your.
Yeah, they won't get a free. They definitely won't get a free ebook. That's for sure.
Other Rachel asked one of my favorite questions that she's asked all of my authors, which is a two-parter, right? So what's the hardest part of your favorite book to write? So what was your favorite book to write first is what you had to figure out. And then what was the hardest part?
What was my favorite book to write? So far it has been Doppelgangers in Deceit, which is the very first one. And that's because I get to introduce the characters. And it was also the difficult part was, excuse me, but the difficult part for that was making sure to capture Sidious, or Jean Michel, in a way that people, even though he's doing really bad things, that they could feel for him, that they feel something for him. He's what most people would call my main character. So,
okay, yeah, I totally get that, because in my book, A Curse of Scales and Feathers, Calden, the main male character, he's not very likable. I try to set up in like the prologue, okay, here's what leads to him not being very likable in the beginning, but then I want my readers to root for him by the end. So I get that, trying to figure out that balance of, okay, how unlikable do you make them, and how do they come back from that?
The very first chapter tells a lot without actually saying it. And it's basically, I've gotten so much feedback from that first chapter. People love it. People hate it. I can't win.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, it just seems so slow at first, Well, it's slow because it's showing who he is. It's showing he's very depressed. He's very, and at first you're like, well, why is he? Because he looks in the mirror. He looks in the side of a building in a plate glass window, and he sees who he was behind him, and he sees who he is now, and he just doesn't know where he is in this world right now. And so that's part of the main plot, is him trying to find himself and trying to figure out what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And then the end of it is a huge battle. So everybody's like, oh, well, we love the end of it because it's really, really fast paced and it's a battle.
Yeah.
And then I've got the other ones who actually got it. And they're like, I love the way this scene is written. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to leave it there.
Yeah. I mean, you can't please everybody. So.
Right.
Another question from Rachel. Any tips for writing compelling, impactful kiss scene?
You'll have to excuse me. I've got what Shannon was talking about, allergies from the weather.
Yep.
So I'm having to fight that. Okay. Any tips for writing a compelling, impactful kiss scene? Make sure that before the kiss happens, your audience already likes the characters, for one thing. Make sure that you're expressing the emotion of the moment. Through showing how they touch, how they're looking at each other, how quickly the kiss happens. There are small things that tell the audience what this kiss means. Is it passionate? And if it's passionate, is it passionate because they love each other, or is it passionate because they're lusting for each other, or is it just that they're in the mood? I mean, there's so many different types of kisses, but it's the lead up to that kiss, and it's the actual expressions and everything that's going on with the two characters that are kissing, that make the kiss, not the actual kiss, in my opinion, anyway.
I feel the same way. Yeah. We had Dreaming Truth Kim in. Felicia, hello, good morning.
Hey.
Hi, Rachel. Devin had to leave out, take son to work, and then
Devin's
I did.
busy.
Hello. All right. The next question I have is one I've been asking all my authors. Oh, wait. No, I skipped this one. The next installment in the series is The Vampire's Dragon. That's this one. I think you mentioned it was a prequel to the main series. So how is this book connected to the rest of your worlds?
This book, along with, well, all of the books that are going to be in this prequel is, this is stuff that happened in the past to the characters that are now in the urban fantasy present day feature series. The Dragon Tasker series is the name of the series itself, but this is The Life and Loves of a Dragon, which is his story along the lines when he went to the other world, and he worked with the pack that will in the future be part of the story in this world. So all of these are connected just because the characters. Sebastian is the vampire in this, and in the urban fantasy series, he is, well, they're love interests in this book, and you'll see how deeply they care about each other, and has turned somewhat to almost hate and antagonism in the urban fantasy series between them. So there's the difference between the past versions and the present versions, and a couple of my beta readers they're like, well, now we're curious what happened, what leads from this where they're just like almost the perfect couple to when they can't stand it to be in the same room with each other. Yeah. And I was like, well, you got to keep reading to find out.
Yep. When do you start using foreshadowing? Like, example, first page, somewhere else in first chapter, then something in each chapter going forward, every other chapter?
Well, I mean, I foreshadowed in the urban fantasy series. I foreshadowed from the very first line. Ezekiel Skinner always gets what he wants. He's not even in the first few chapters. He's a character that is literally not in the first few chapters, but his name is very important. He winds up being the villain, and you get this sense of foreboding from what the main character is talking about. He's talking about his relationship with this character, and his name is mentioned. I like to foreshadow when it comes to my writing, right up front, but I don't often make it as important. Like, I don't make it seem important sometimes, as that particular foreshadowing was. There'll be little clues here and there, but there won't be anything overt. That one always stood out to me, and it passed muster on several levels when it came to alpha, beta readers, and even the editor was like, no, really, you should make that the very first sentence. That's really good. Even though nobody knows who this character is, it foreshadows how important he is.
And I do think there's a fine line, because readers like to feel smart. They like to know that they have figured stuff out, but they don't want the information to be like spoon-fed to them. Right. So, giving those foreshadowing hints is that line of, okay, how much do you give? How much do you say? Where the reader, if they're paying attention, will pick it up. But it doesn't.
Like this one's in your face, but at the same time,
it's not, because he's not right. He's not in the first chapter. Right, he's
Right.
not there. So, yeah, even though it says that when I haven't read it, but if someone reads that first line and they move into the next chapter, that chapter, the rest of the chapter, and this character hasn't appeared, you're going to kind of start losing that name a little bit,
Mhm.
especially if it's not brought back up because it's the beginning of a story. Any story, you get all these names, you're trying to figure out where all these players go.
Yeah, and also you're watching this character who's mentioned this in his thoughts that
Mhm.
this Ezekiel Skinner gets whatever he wants. What Ezekiel Skinner wants, he gets. I think is how I labeled it. And then the rest of it is this character doing some self-reflection and then attacking people. And then you see him do something really bad and you then you move on to the next main character and you see a little snippet out of his life and then you move on and and even when you see or you see the character Ezekiel in other chapters within this book, at first he's just very calm, cool, collected, and you don't think anything about it. So yeah, it's definitely a line to walk. Foreshadowing is a great tool, but at the same time, you don't want to just immediately go, this is what I'm going to do, and ta-da, this is it. So you want to make sure there's twists and turns along the way.
Yeah. All right. So who is your favorite fantasy romance author?
Uh I don't know. Like I was looking at that question and I was like, I started with fantasy and most of the fantasies that I read had a sprinkling of romance, always that little bit of unrequited or secret crush kind of loves and stuff like that. If I had to choose one, uh, more recently would be El Penelope, uh, is one that I've read recently
Which one did
that
you
I
read?
liked. Um, and it was just like the the preface thing. It wasn't actually like the book. So I'm just like, I don't know. I I liked the parts of the story so far that I've read of your stories.
Oh,
So it's kind of like I don't really want to claim a one author
yeah.
on that. I just don't because like I said, there are there are romantic subtexts in fantasy whereas I love the fantasy portion of it and the romance just like the cherry on top for some people. Elaine Cunningham was one of the originals that I read that had some of that in it. And but to be honest, her books I don't think are even labeled romance or fantasy romance. They're just fantasy.
Yeah.
So
A lot of fantasy do have those subplots in there.
mhm.
So I think it's the genre itself hasn't been recognized in like retailer categories for until just recently, last couple years.
Right.
So
Right. I think so. I think that there was a pivot wherein people started realizing that they liked or readers and authors both like to push a little bit more romance and more sex and steamy scenes and stuff into their work and therefore they I don't know publishers maybe were they had to come up with a subgenre that was specific to that.
yeah.
But yeah, I guess I'm old school on that. Daughter of the Drow and several of the others that are by Elaine Cunningham caught me, wherein we're talking about a fantastical world, the Forgotten Realms, and you're talking about specific fantasy characters, dark elves versus high mages and things like that. And but the romance was definitely a big part of it.
Yeah. And one of my very first fantasy authors I really loved was Terry Brooks, the Short of Shannara series and the subsequent spinoffs. But the one that I probably will always remember and dear to my heart is the second book in the Sword of Shannara series, the Elfstones of Shannara. So each book is a different generation. So the second book was like two generations in the future. And it was mostly a love story. It was kind of a sort of a love triangle, but not really because the main male character and two female characters, but they're not all three together most of the time. But he's in love with one of them, but she sacrifices herself in the end to save her people, the elves, and then he has a relationship with the other woman instead. But it was that whole like him being in love with this woman who was going to give her life up, basically. So yeah, it was a
So
romance.
sad, tragic.
It was tragic, but I loved it. I mean, he did end up having the romance with the other woman, and then their kids are like the next book, so or their grandkids are the next book. So, but yeah. And Devin says, listening to you on the drive. Thank you. And then Felicia says, for you, is it more difficult to write a male character versus a female character, or vice versa?
I would say for me, it's both the same. I just happen to be in love with some of the male characters that I write. I just the male characters for me are a challenge. So they started off as a challenge in fan fiction, and I just kept going with that. And the female characters, I don't have as much challenge with them because I'm female, and I get the issues that we have to face. So it's a little less challenging. And so I guess that answers the question of what I like to do more is the male characters, because I like the challenge of coming up with a male character.
You know, it's funny. I am female, but I find females challenging to write. But all my main characters are females, because I always felt like, I even felt as a kid like I'm more masculine than in my thought process. I always thought I was more masculine, because just the way I would think. And I've had, even my husband, when I first met him, he was like, "You think like a dude."
Well, when similar situation, like I didn't think like a dude, but I was thinking like what society told me to think. And once I started hanging out with the dudes more, I was like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
You know, so it was one of those where, I mean, I've always hung out, like when I was a kid, I was in a company of 5 guys. And if my cousin came over, every once in a while, there'd be another girl there, but otherwise I was the only girl, but I was treated like one of the guys. So
same.
Yeah.
I grew up with 2 brothers, and my dad was dominated the household. My mom didn't really say as much. So I kind of grew up with that. And I always did think, I did wonder, and my dad was actually, he's a bit sexist. I didn't know that growing up. I remember him saying how women are the worst drivers ever. And, all these things about women. And
my husband says that just to get on my nerves.
Yeah. Well, he said it and believed it. And it wasn't until I had to buy my own car insurance and they said, oh yeah, it's cheaper for women because men get more accidents. And I'm like, how are women the worst drivers if men are the ones that get in the most accidents?
Right.
But yeah.
It's like,
okay. Yeah. That's where I started realizing that my dad was a bit sexist. So I always wondered, was I always trying to think like him because I wanted him to love me, because even though I was female. So, but
that could be it. I mean, we've got all kind of little grow up problems that we've internalized, especially genetics.
And Devin's like, same, I think more masculine. Yeah. We have a lot in common, Devin. Oops. Gotta head out now. This is great. Thank you both. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming by.
All right. Last question for you. What is your favorite fantasy or romance trope and why?
I think it has always been sunshine and grump. That's just, I see that so much in real life that I just go to it. I think that, and it changes up, like, especially like even in my stories, it's like somebody will be the sunshine person and somebody will be the grumpy person. And then the tables turn and the grumpy person realizes, oh, I'm going to lose my sunshine person if I don't do something.
Yeah.
And I think that I fall into that trope really easily whenever I'm writing anything. So I think that that's probably one of my favorites to read too.
Okay. I have seen, of course, the trope before and read a few things in movies. You see a lot of movies too. But I don't think I've ever been able to, I've never written it. I don't know if I could write it, but I would have to try really hard to make it work.
Sometimes I think people write it and they don't realize that they've written it.
I don't think any of my characters are sunshine, but I write about broken characters, so none of my characters are sunshine.
Broken. Yeah, that's too. It's like they're the hurt character, and there's always somebody that's there to try and comfort them, comfort. So
Yeah. So usually I would write about broken characters, and now that I'm writing fantasy romance, both my main characters are broken characters. So
So
in some
so they're
way,
just like, look here, sir.
yep, yes. Well, and there's a lot of that in the first book because I mean, Calden's broken and he's kind of an a-hole because of it, and Ari has a pretty bad, childhood and life, and she's like, I'm not putting up with it.
Right.
So, but, yeah,
It winds up being the ones that don't put up with it. That's the ones that they're like, oh, okay, that's
yeah,
different.
yeah. It annoys him at first, but they say that's how you write a romance: is that whatever qualities the romance couple like in the other would be the same qualities they find annoying or don't like in the beginning when they first meet.
Yes.
And then they
Yes.
realize how it's more of a strength and not really something that's bothersome.
Yes. When it comes to ours, it's more the naivety. Even in this one, in the Vampire's Dragon, it's flipped because in the urban fantasy series, Cineas is the one that's the older version, the older person, the more experienced person, and Gabriel is the naive one. Well, in this one, it's not that Cineas is naive; he doesn't think about things as quickly. He's very impetuous,
Mm,
and the vampire's like, I can't believe you just did that. So
yeah.
it's the annoying part. Then they wind up loving each other. So
Well, now we are going to move into the section of the broadcast that's called Fun and Games, and
okay,
we're doing a mini plot challenge. For those who are in the chat, you can still ask questions at any time. We will come back to the chat often and check in with you guys. And for the mini plot challenge, what we're going to do is that we're going to do a random drawing from common fantasy romance scenarios, and we're going to challenge ourselves to come up with the most unexpected plot twist. So probably would not happen, right? And everyone in the chat, we would love for you guys to join us along as well. And I think I set it up where once we got the plot twist, we'll have 2 minutes to try and come up with something
okay.
to the plot twist or to the scenario. So let me share my screen. So I did this as a random drawing. I put a bunch of scenarios in here. Yeah, find the right button. All right, and press start. Pirate's Love. A character falls for a notorious pirate on a quest for a legendary enchanted treasure, entangling their fates amidst high seas and hidden islands. It's interesting. All right, let me get the clock set. You think you're ready for it?
Okay, and so we're trying to come up with a plot twist for that.
Yeah, so I guess something that you wouldn't think would happen from this.
Okay.
Think you got it?
No, but I'm going to try.
I don't, yeah, I'm the same here. I'm like, I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to come up with something. Okay. I'm ready and good. 2 minutes. Okay, that was 2 minutes. I did not come up with anything.
I could something.
What did you come up with?
Okay. So I'm gonna twist it into a rivals to lovers.
Okay.
They're having an adventure on the high seas, trying to find the treasure. And as they constantly come into contact with each other here, there, and everywhere, they wind up getting closer, and they decide to work together by the end of the adventure. But when they get to the cove where they're supposed to find the hidden treasure, it turns out that the pirate's heart is the treasure that is need or the key to get to the treasure. So will the character kill the pirate to get the treasure, or will they leave the quest together?
I love that. I did write stuff, but there's no twist in here. All it is that I made my pirate a female, and the guy, he's got a map to the treasure, and she's a pirate that's willing to go through this crashing rocks of the waters around the hidden island, and that's about as far as I got. I could not think of a twist.
Well, I like twists, so
yes, I do too, but I couldn't think of one. I do like that rivals to lovers and the whole have to fall in love or the heart.
Every time I hear the pirate, I think of Black Sails and I think of Captain Jack Sparrow. So all of the piratey stuff that I've come up with. Actually, because of where we live, I've done more and more research into pirates, and because Blackbeard ran Queen Anne's Revenge aground only maybe I guess 75 miles from here. So we have that lots of people doing research and historical stuff, and we were able to see, different doubloons and things that were picked up from it and part of the wreckage. So one of my side characters is actually Edward Teach, who is Blackbeard, but he's a dragon. So he just changes his persona, his aliases every time he needs to, and that happened to be one of them.
Well, and I do have pirates in my world, and then my prequel has a pirate. So I was like, okay, could be her, like her grandmother. But I don't know. I just don't know. But yeah, I like that. It's cool that you're near that research that you can have right there to use and pull into your book. So Devin says the pirate's heart is actually the treasure. No, that's to Davy Jones.
To Davy Jones.
Sounds like a good short story, you guys. I'm just popping in a quick hello, Jordan. Hope everyone has a good day. We treat each other with probably kindness, respect, somewhere along those lines. I appreciate that. Thank you. So, all right. I think we'll go ahead and move into. I'm bummed that I couldn't come up with a plot twist for mine. I'm still thinking.
Well, I mean, still think about it. So you've got the treasure. Who had the treasure?
He's got the map and she's got the pirate ship.
Okay, so they've got to work together. Period.
Yeah.
Turns out that what were you were talking about the grandmother? Maybe the grandmother actually left the map to his ancestor or something, maybe, or
yeah, that could work. So like maybe he finds out he was actually a pirate too, or his families were his
family was a pirate.
Yes. So he's like against, like he's like, you're like lower than scum, but I'm going to use you because you're the only way I'm going to get there. And he treats her and the crew bad because he thinks pirates are terrible. And then he finds out he actually came from a family of pirates.
Yes. I like it. Cool. I like it. I would read that.
Christina, hello. Hope everyone's well. Pop in and say hi. Share some love with the life.
I'm the map.
Oh, I have not heard that in so long. Boombox plays. He's a pirate. Is that a song? Treasure Island. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and we're going to move into the writing sprint. And we're just going to do a random prompt. I have number 1 through 16. So if you want to choose a number, Rachel.
8.
That's like my second favorite number. 16 is my favorite.
Wow.
Okay, banner.
Usually I would say 13 and 7, but I wanted to go crazy this time.
Well, seven is like a number. Well, three and seven are numbers of power, like in many fairy tales, legends, stories, myths. Um,
I think I picked up on that when I was a kid because I love myths and legends, and so it's just stayed. Plus, 13 is because everybody was like, "Oh, that's just such an unlucky number." I was like, "Not for me. It's
yeah.
never going to be unlucky anymore."
An immortal elf and a mortal human meet under the light of a rare celestial event, but they have the challenge of their vastly different lifespans. Oh, you could have like the mortal. They the challenge this rare celestial event. Maybe it's a falling star that you can actually catch. That I think it reminds me of a movie. And they go catch it, and he swallows it, and then the human, he or she, they are become immortal.
Become immortal too.
Yep. Yeah, that would be kind of cool.
Isn't that a gaming story?
Maybe I maybe that's where this. I'm thinking of a movie where there was a falling star, and it was a female, and the witches were
Yes.
trying to get her.
Yes.
Yeah, for so they could live forever.
I think that's what it
So it's
was.
kind of a twist on that.
See,
Yeah.
now I can't think of the name now. I'm gonna have to look
I
that
don't,
up. This
yeah, I
is
don't remember
bother
what it's
me.
called. I can see parts of the movie in my head, but I can't remember what it's called. Uh, let's see. We got some
But
comments.
that's the prompt.
Yeah, that's the prompt. Treasure Island. Oh, what's the movie with the guy who can read Latin with a female captain? With the female captain. Oh, I don't know. I don't think I've heard that movie. What about five? Like a five-man band. You like five? No, I think she likes number five. Most groups in a story are five people. The leader, the lancer, the big guy, the smart guy, the heart. Well, I will tell you,
Oh,
if you pay attention, if you have a scene, a story, a book, a scene, okay? In most cases, if you have a group, the group is always going to be an odd number because that's what gives opposition. Stardust.
that's
Yes.
it. Yes. I
Yep.
just found it. I was like, "Oh, there it is."
So if you notice like a lot of like even think about Harry Potter, it's Harry Potter, Hermione, and
Ron.
Weasley, Ron Weasley. Yeah. So it's three because that way you always have someone who's going to be an odd man out, and it creates opposition when it comes to like making decisions or doing things or whatever.
I never thought about it that way, but that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, I heard that as a tip from a podcast I listened to a couple years ago, and if you pay attention, groups are always odd because then you will have, if they're trying to split a decision, you're always going to have someone. There's always going to be two sides, and they're going to be fighting, and someone's going to get outmaneuvered in some way.
Okay.
So, alrighty, I gotta share the screen. Get this romantic candles timer. All right, and if we are ready, we'll get started in 3, 2, 1, and go. And that
We're
is.
back.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Oh, okay.
You were kind of muffled at first, so I
Oh,
was
okay.
like, "Did I do something?"
So, how did you do?
I got through 3 chapters of reading that I wanted to get through, so I'm good.
I had mentioned Rachel behind scenes before we started our sprint that I was going to use that to write my letters to my street team because I'm sending out some stuff in the mail today. Some of them run prizes and some didn't, but I'm still sending out. And I knew I had these dragon cards that I wanted to use as where to write my letters. I tore apart my office. I tore apart the spare bedroom. I couldn't find them. I was like, what the heck? I guess I'll just make some cards because I do have some blank
Oh,
cards and I have some
no.
stencils. Yeah, I came back here. I have a stack of books right here. You can't see it, but I have okay, so I've got this stack of books sitting right here. It was between that stack of books and my computer tower. That's where my dragon cards are. And I had 3 minutes left. And then I was trying to figure out which ones to give to which, so I've got these different dragon cards. So, and I've got a bunch more, but I was like, okay, which one to which one? So yeah, I didn't write them. I spent almost the whole time trying to find my dragon cards.
Well, I mean, at least you found them.
I did. So.
I'm horrible about hiding stuff from myself, so.
It was right here the whole time. I just didn't see it because I had it, it was sitting upright. All my cards were sitting upright in the little container. And yeah, they're on top of the stamps too, so that's perfect. I'm gonna catch up with the chat here real quick. Rachel said then there's me making all sorts of even numbered trash goblin powers. Yeah, I like even numbers over odd numbers too. I'm late, but I made it. Hi, everyone. Hello, Rita. You're just on time. Did you get a chance to write any? Yay, glad to see everyone. Trash goblins are glorious. Ooh, we got a question for you. I don't know if you answered already, but do you have a favorite historical setting, and do you feel that setting is more romantic, like Regency England, Paris, France?
I told her that this was complicated for me. I would say that anything in the 19th century Europe, for me, I really love it. Also, the early days of New Orleans, which means that I guess I fell in love with that because of Interview with the Vampire. But having lived on the Gulf Coast and nearby well enough to go visit, that was nice. The allure of it, I love all of the facades of the houses and also the fact that this is kind of the time frame right before we get cars and we get things like that. Mm-hmm. I really like that for some reason. I like the horses and stuff and things. The problem, and here's the twist, is that I was a history major. So I also know the bad parts of all of that. Mm-hmm. So that is always this little voice in the back of my mind. Yeah, but, Yeah. And so I have to actually mute him and be like, no. We're just going to focus on the really pretty guy and the pretty girl or the two pretty guys or the two pretty girls or whatever we're doing. We're not going to focus on historically accurate stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
That's not happening today. Now, as another thing that I wanted to do, I want to set something up where I've got a story that happens in Greece or in Italy, because like Rita said, for me, as far as modern world, to me, those areas are very beautiful. But I grew up. My first love when it came to mythology was Greece and Rome.
Yeah.
The mythology was made there. So I've always wanted to go there, and I've always wanted to write stories based out of there.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way. I get to make up worlds, so I have. And you were talking about cutscenes earlier and how you offer that to your Ream followers. And I was like, the book I'm writing right now, there's a scene I think I'm going to have to cut. And I was like, I could offer that, and that would probably be like my romantic favorite historical setting. It's not historical, right? But I mean, everything is set up for mine's like 11th century time frame for us, but there's magic. But I made this place. It's called the Prism Wood, and if you can think of it's similar to Avatar the movie. When they touch the plants would light up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the plants light up when you touch them, but it's not day or night. They just always light up. but then they also they give off color. So and the texture is like silt. So like earth that is in the ocean. You know how that kind of feels when
Oh
you're touching it.
yeah,
It's
kind of
like silt.
silky.
It's a silky feel. So it
Mhm.
gives like that color and you can paint with it. And my main character, she paints all over and then she paints the dragon with sea creatures because she's a mermaid. And she thinks that's funny because having sea creatures like a sea turtle on the dragon. So, but she spends the whole time painting everything herself, the dragon, anything she can paint, she spends it painting. So that was like a romantic, but I'm gonna have to cut it out because it just doesn't, it adds too much. I thought it was a good scene to show some like, between them spending time
And
together.
there's going to be times like that. Like that's part of the reason that I decided on the cutting room floor, because I was like, some of these scenes are fantastic. It's not
Yeah.
that they're bad. It's just that you run out of space. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to do something.
Yeah.
And we also like, I would say as far as settings are concerned, it's like, do you have any like fantasy settings that you kind of based on something from our world? Like for me, it's like the fantasy world that I use. Part of it is based on Rome.
Hmm.
So the Dragon City is actually, the architecture is Roman, ancient Roman, with all of the arenas and stuff like that.
So in the first book, the architecture, I somewhat based it off of Norman Viking era times. Um, but I mean, I think I talked about this in the last Charm Chats, but it's 11th century. I specifically put 11th century because I want to do it during a time that gunpowder was just being invented. And back then they called it black powder,
Mm-hmm.
but because they didn't have guns at first, so they used it for other things. First fireworks. They had what they called fire arrows. So they like they would take a lance and they put a tube of paper that was tightly um, pulled together, and they put the black powder in there on the lance, and then have a piece of cloth coming from it, so like a bomb almost, like, but it would shoot out of the front of the lance. So they had fire arrows and stuff like that, but on fire lances. But yeah, so the Chinese actually had a monopoly on one of the three ingredients that goes into black powder. It is bat guano, but nobody knew it was bat guano. They just knew that the Chinese had this monopoly on this source, and they had these mountains where they got it from, and it was called Chinese snow. So in my story, the dwarves live in the mountains and they have dwarven snow, and so they have the monopoly on the third ingredient for the
History, everybody.
Yep. So yeah, it's in there. I do include things like that. Rita says, romantic settings. I love Italy, Greece, and any place that has amazing wine, cheeses, and oceanic views. Ika, hello. Hello, everyone. Okay. Yeah, it's complicated. So you told us. Heather, hello. Welcome. I'm home. LOL, my son did not like typing for me while I was driving. Well, I've had my husband do that for me. Glad you made it home. Too bad, so sad I need to drive. You're my hands-free model. Yep, that. Lots of hellos, back and forth. A nice little side story bonus cutscene for newsletter subs. Yep, great idea. Your hubs is right. You are the idea fairy. More hellos. Guana bowls. Collect the whole set. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up the chat. I think I got through most of everybody saying hello back and forth. And I did link. Rachel gave me the link for her website. I linked that in the chat. It's at the top, so you can check that out. But as we start to wrap up the chat, you guys can drop any other last minute questions you might have. But Rachel, can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on next and when it might come out?
We are working on book 3 right now. If you follow my social media, you can see me tear my, my tears and my struggles and everything through book 3, because we basically had it set up and we were like, oh, this is perfect. And then we realized that we had a fatal flaw in all of our plans. So we're kind of going back to the drawing board on book 3, but we have most of the scenes done, edited. We just have to figure out what order they come in and also what has to be written in between these scenes. So I'm really still hoping that we can release it by the fall. Book 3 is going to be for the main series, the urban fantasy series. It is also what you would call the muddy middle of the series, and the midpoint turn is also in this book. So it's a very important book, but it also can be, for some people, it's a little more relaxed compared to the action-packed books that come before and after. Also, because we've got the Vampire's Dragon coming out April the 10th, hopefully, we got fingers crossed. But if you read the Vampire's Dragon, say you read the prequel series, which is the Pax Dragon, you get for free as an ebook if you join my newsletter. And if you then read the Vampire's Dragon because you just can't get enough of Cineas and his misadventures, then you want to continue their stories and find out what happens to Sebastian and Cineas after that, and what and everybody else that's involved that gets introduced. Then go to Vela. We have Kindle Vela that is named the same as the series, The Life and Loves of a Dragon. And if you don't want to do Vela, I have that on Ream. I have it also behind paywall on Ream. I would share it, but we have to keep it behind a paywall since it's on Vela. It's kind of a legal situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, the continued story is there.
Okay. I got one last question for you here. How much research on average do you do for historical setting before you start your stories?
I research as I go along. I do the story first, and then I'm like, okay, so now, would this happen? How, what am I looking at here? We had, there's actually some scenes in The Vampire's Dragon wherein I had to put on my research cap about some things that were kind of on the kinky side. Like, would this happen? Do they have these things available at this time frame? And I was actually shocked at some of the stuff that I found out, how old some of these things are, that I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So we have no problem with some of this stuff being here, because even though it's 19th century, it's been around since the 3rd century. So, I kind of just do the story first, and then I go back and I do my research, because the way I look at it is the story is most important. The characters are most important. You can always go back and you can change what you've got going on when it comes to researching something and finding out, oh, they wouldn't have said that. Oh, they wouldn't have done that. Or, oh, this particular kind of lighting wouldn't have been available at that time, or it would be available. So I need to change that.
Of course, if you have magic, then you can do other things. You can always make it work in some way.
Yes, if it's in the other world, I can always make it work, because
you can always make it work.
A mixture.
Yeah. I would say that I get a lot of ideas from just watching stuff. I'm like, oh, I'm going to incorporate that in my next story, or I'm going to incorporate that in my current story. But then, if I get to a certain point in my book where I haven't done research, then I do the same thing as you. I just kind of write around what I don't know and just kind of put in there, I need to go do research on this, and then go do it. So yeah, I'm kind of saying.
Yeah, that too. Like as you're writing, you're like, oh, make a note. I need to look that up. I'm not sure if they had gas lights at this point. Let me write this down. Or what would they do at this point? You can see, like, on the book cover. Now, remember, book covers don't always reflect things that, you try, but you're limited by what you can find, as far as an artist's rendition of stuff. So, and what you actually then can afford for the artist to do. But yeah, that's been something that's been fun, is researching the historic background of the 19th century.
Rita says, thanks for hosting. Awesome to hear about your book, Rachel. Devin's like, love the chat. Love these chats. The Vampire's Dragon is so good. And author Hollingsworth, hello. Welcome. All right. So we're going to go ahead and, I did the same. All my characters are using fountain pens and clocks everywhere.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to go ahead and start wrapping up the show. So please tell everyone where they can find you and purchase your books.
RachelDAdams.com is my website. I tried to make sure everything is linkable through that. And you can also find my author stuff through there, because I do some resources for authors. Whenever I see something or somebody tells me, like, hey, this will come in handy for me to use too, then I usually share it that way. And recently I wanted to also plug the Facebook group. I opened a Facebook group because there were lots of people that were wanting to do promos and things like that. And I felt like my regular Facebook page was getting inundated with them. So I opened the Facebook group specifically, and 2 days a week we do promos, and it's for fantasy, any genre that is related to fantasy, including horror. that is 18 plus. So because there are so many YA stuff out there that I was like, let me just make sure that this is 18 plus.
Yeah, I
And
like
we can
that.
do it that way.
Is that also on your website? Is that linked to your website yet?
That is not linked yet to my website. That's the reason I wanted to plug it. It is Magical Mischief on Facebook. Let me see if I can pull up the link, and I'll put it in the chat real quick.
Okay. Well, I will talk about too that tomorrow we have the last Charmed Chats Happily Ever After Sprints. That's with Elaine Canyon, who's going to be on the show. It's actually leap day of the leap year at 11 a.m. Central, and that'll be 12 p.m. Eastern. And
Magical.
there it is. We got it up there. So thank you everyone for coming today. And like I said, we just got one more day left. And I heard something the way they do leap years, that this is like the last leap year until, I don't know. I need to go back and listen to it again, but it was something I was hearing about how they do leap years. And then this is the last one for a while. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Oh, I'll have to look into that.
Final countdown. Yeah, I told myself I need to look into it because I don't, again, whatever you hear doesn't necessarily mean it's right. You have to go fact check, you know? So I've been meaning to figure that out. And now that I'm thinking about leap day tomorrow, me. I don't know. All right. We'll see you guys all tomorrow. And thank you so much for coming on today, Rachel.
Thanks for having me.